Got the urge to tell the world about it.
Fans and non-fans alike are familiar with George Jones, one of the best country music of all time, first for his singing and then for his struggle with drugs and alcohol. Join Facts First as we delve into the difficulties of the legendary country music icon. Timeline of drug abuse and career lapses. George Jones endured with addiction to alcohol and drugs over the majority of his career. In 1967, he checked into a neurological hospital for treatment of his alcohol and amphetamine addiction. It was around this period, when he was still married to Shirley Ann Corley, that the first lawnmower incident occurred, when his wife, Tammy Wynette, gave birth to their only child, Georgette, in October of 1970. George had to be straitjacketed and taken to the Watson Clinic in Lakeland, Florida, where he spent 10 days detoxing in a padded cell. After some time, the sedative Librium was provided to help him balance out. And these were only the early, less severe episodes in George Jones's long history of battling his demons. His professional career was booming at the time, and the psychotic episodes were only detours on the road to his Hall of Fame history. Though he had yet to reach his commercial peak, he was still battling addiction. Throughout the 1980s, George Jones enjoyed a string of top 10 songs, including 81's Still Doing Time and 83's I Always Get Lucky With You. His song If Drinking Don't Kill Me, Her Memory Will peaked at number 8 on the charts and went on to become one of his most recognizable songs. George was topping the charts with Tennessee Whiskey about the same time that heroin traffickers David Snoddy and Donald Gilbreth were arguing before Magistrate Judge Ronald Fonseca that a box of George Jones tapes was worthy collateral. Even though George's career was at an all-time high in 1982, the singer was suffering at a low point in his life. In early '82, he got into serious conflict with the law for the first time when he was arrested in Mississippi on charges of DUI and cocaine possession. Then, on March 29, 1982, he was driving home to Muscle Shoals, Alabama, when he crashed his car. He was taken to a hospital in Birmingham, where he received treatment for alcoholism and drug abuse. But shortly after the release, the possum relapsed, leading to what was arguably the wildest event of his career and garnering widespread media attention. On Tuesday, May 25, 1982, en route from Nashville to Brentwood on Interstate 65, Jones was spotted by a Tennessee Highway Patrol trooper weaving erratically between lanes. Jones, who did not appear to be actively dodging arrest or even caring that Officer Tommy Campsey was attempting to pull him over, continued driving down the highway. Jones did eventually pull over, and when the officer approached the vehicle, he discovered a bottle of whiskey that had been consumed halfway. In addition, Jones's car lacked a valid registration. Rather than an actual license plate, he had a piece of cardboard with the words Possum Number 3 written on it, affixed to the front of his vehicle. A camera team from a local news station was passing by just as Jones was pulled over and detained at around 7 p.m. Due to the fact that they were aware of the country superstar's presence, the camera team decided to halt and record the event. Jones was unmoved by the accusation and insisted he wasn't inebriated. He then attempted to kick the cameraman in the groin. Following his arrest, Jones was transported to the Williamson County Jail in Franklin, where he was subsequently placed under a bond of $500, and Possum Number 3 was seized. In the early morning hours of March 6, 1999, George was a passenger in a car that was involved in an accident not far from his residence in Franklin, Tennessee. When his SUV collided with a bridge, he was thrown from the vehicle and sustained severe injuries, including a punctured lung, a lacerated liver, and an internal hemorrhage. Jones was hospitalized for 13 days. He initially told authorities he was talking on his cell phone, but they later discovered an open bottle of vodka inside the car. In a subsequent press appearance, Jones admitted guilt for driving under the influence and an open container violation. It had been 18 years since Nancy Jones, George Jones's then wife, had made meaningful progress in getting him sober. However, he inevitably fell back into his old habits each time. But following his injury in '99, George vowed never to drink or smoke again, and he kept that promise until he died in 2013. How he influenced the culture of country music. Some stories of George Jones are amusing, others tragic, but they're all part of the history of country music. When the native Texan subsequently relocated to Nashville, he began to experience success in his career. His fame exploded when he adopted the Nashville sound in the early '60s. Afterwards, he harbored ambitions of starting his own club. He also understood that would enhance his professional standing. In particular, he wanted a location bearing his name or anywhere around his name. So Jones established Possum Holler on Nashville's well-known Lower Broadway Street in 1967. The location was ideal. It was across from Ernest Tubbs' record store, close to Tootsie's. On the other side of the alley was the Ryman Auditorium, which served as the Grand Ole Opry's original home. The old room, which was on the top floor of an ancient building and had a lofty ceiling, hardly had a scarcity of talent. Almost everyone in the city who was someone ended up hanging out at the club, including visitors to the Saturday Night Opry. After finishing their performances, musicians and their bands would move to Possum Holler and end their performances. Roy Acuff was one of the most admired and frequent guests in Possum Holler. George Jones's Possum Holler was in Printers Alley. It was well known in the early 40s as the place where everyone in the news and print industry would congregate after work. And although it continued to draw a large number of regulars, it didn't quite have the same atmosphere as the original. Although it bore his name, Jones didn't own it. It was owned by his manager, Shug Baggett. Baggett operated it in a different manner from the original, and it lacked the attraction of an artist hangout. Baggett was also the one who led Jones down the most negative path. He gave Jones cocaine to startle him out of his inebriated stupor before a performance. It was the start of Jones's career's most difficult period. He finally recovered his sobriety and resumed his profession in the 80s, but he never attempted to launch a rival bar. However, the initial success of Possum Holler eventually encouraged other country musicians to start their own venues. The notion of country singers with bars is still around today, despite the fact that some have succeeded and others have failed. For evidence, take a look at Toby Keith's I Love This Bar chain, not to mention the innumerable one-offs owned by artists all over. The unpleasant price of alcohol and drug abuse. George was one of the finest country music singers of all time, but he experienced a life of pain and poverty and sang about it in his songs. He had more songs recorded than any other country artist and had the most singles on the charts, but he paid the price for spending so much time on the street and sleeping on buses or cars as he traveled from one place to the next. He had a difficult upbringing, went through several divorces and marriages, and abused his body. He was a constant user of drugs, alcohol, and smoking, which led to the destruction of his lungs, liver, heart, and stomach. Along with other numerous honors and distinctions, Jones was welcomed into the Country Music Hall of Fame and awarded the National Medal of the Arts, Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award, and National Medal of the Arts. The last few years of his life, nevertheless, were terrible. His bad health affected everything he did. He had to frequently cancel and reschedule shows since drinking had permanently destroyed his liver and smoking had irreversibly harmed his lungs. He was admitted to the hospital on April 18th in Nashville, and on April 26, 2013, following 6 days in the hospital's intensive care unit, he passed away. Hypoxic respiratory failure was listed as the official reason for his death. He Stopped Loving Her Today was once again ranked among the top songs in the nation the week following his passing. Now it's time to hear from you. Did you grow up listening to George Jones? Which song is your favorite? Let us know in the comments section below.